Okay, so we are in this GED Steck-Von skill book. We are doing science, life science, so we're going to start with lesson 1, restating information. We're going to practice on cells. So we're going to go to page 3 here. Okay, it says, when you restate information, you say it again, but in a different way. It's kind of like when you're writing your essays and you restate your thesis. You take your general idea and you use different words. For example, when you take notes on a lecture or while reading a text, you often restate the information in a shortened form. You may rearrange the facts, change the words a little, or even draw a diagram to show the information, and that's very important. Some of you guys are visual learners, so you got to draw a picture to figure out what you're taking in. It says, read this sentence. Cytology, the study of cells and how they work, has led to better understanding of disease and genetics. Now read this sentence. Our knowledge of disease and genetics has benefited from cytology, the study of cells and how they work. Notice that the facts and the words have been rearranged, but both sentences convey the same information. It talks about cytology, it tells us what it is, it tells us that it's improved our understanding of diseases and genetics. So, questions on the GED test will ask you to recognize information that has been taken from a passage or diagram and has been restated in different words. So remember, when you take the science, even social studies portion, a lot of times you're going to have to read a passage and be able to digest and take in that information and do a lot of different things. So right now we're just talking about restating information that we've read. Try this GED example. It says, cells are building blocks. I'm going to read this paragraph right here. Cells are building blocks of all living things. A cell is the smallest living unit that can carry out the functions of life, growth, feeding, and reproduction. Some organisms, like bacteria, consist of a single cell. However, most organisms, like insects and flowering plants, have huge numbers of cells that perform specialized function. Like single-celled organisms, specialized cells can grow, feed, and reproduce. Okay, so this one says, what is a cell? That's our first question. And right here, the very first, it says cells are the building blocks of all living things, and also smallest living unit that can carry out the functions of life. And these are the functions of life. We have growth is 1, feeding is 2, and reproduction is 3. Okay, so now let's go back and see your answer choices. One says, what is this? The question was, what is a cell? And answer 1 is the smallest unit of living and non-living matter. Now, up here, change my color, it says smallest living unit. So that it has to be alive. So we know it's not number 1 because it said non-living. Okay, number 2, it says a living organism that is neither a plant nor an insect. Well, it says most organisms like insects and flowering plants, so they are included. So X that one out. 3, the smallest part of an organism that can carry out life functions. Hey, look, that's what it says right here. It says smallest living unit that can carry out life functions. So let's hold on to that. 4, the basic building block of bacteria. Well, this says of all living things, not just bacteria. So dump 4. Number 5 says a living unit that always specializes in a particular function of an organism. And it says some organisms like bacteria, like single-celled organisms, specialized cells, but not all. Only specialized cells can focus on these. So the correct answer would be 3, the smallest part of an organism that can carry out the life functions. Okay, let's look at number 2. How does a specialized cell of a multicellular organism differ from a single-cell organism? And right here, this is your clue word, however. It's one of your transition words. When you see however, you know that there's going to be a but, and there's some difference. Most organisms, like insects and flowering plants, have huge numbers of cells that perform specialized functions. So single cells, organisms, they do the job to keep that one alive. But for example, in a person, we have skin cells, we have hair cells, we have blood cells, all different cells that do different jobs in our body versus a bacteria, which just has one cell. So it says 1, it can perform a particular function. Yeah, true. Number 2, it can grow and feed but not reproduce itself. Well, right here it says reproduce. It can reproduce. So we know it's not number 2. Oops, sorry. Number 3, it can reproduce itself but not grow and feed. So it can do all 3 of these 3 things: grow, feed, and reproduce. Number 4, it performs any function needed by the organism. So in the multicellular organism. So we know that my blood cells cannot act the same way that my hair cells act. They have different jobs. And 5, it grows abnormally in the organism. Now, there are abnormally growing cells in our organisms, like cancerous cells, but not all of them are abnormal growths. So this one would be 1. It performs a particular function. So see how I use that little chunk of text to kind of help guide me and find my answers for these restating. So let's go ahead and look at this practice. We're only going to do practice. Sorry, I'm going through this. We're only going to do this first practice on cell structure. It says questions 1 and 2. Unfortunately, you're going to have to read a little chunk and then just do a couple of short questions for each one. Feels like a lot of reading, so that's why you got to build your reading stamina. So cell structure. A typical cell has 3 main parts. The nucleus controls the activities of the cell. Okay, so that's one part. The cytoplasm contains structures that carry out the cell's function. Surrounding the cytoplasm is the cell membrane. So what is the cell membrane? Which controls the passage of substances into and out of the cell. In the cytoplasm are another number of different structured organelles. Endoplasmic reticulum, a network that transports materials throughout the cell and that makes and distributes proteins. That's the ER. We have mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, they say, structures where glucose or sugar is broken down to provide energy. And then we have vacuoles, sacs in the cytoplasm that hold food, water, or waste. Okay, so they all have different. We have 3 main parts up here. We have the nucleus, the cytoplasm, and the cell membrane. And these are the little chunks in there. So the function of the vacuole is most similar to what? So it says they're sacs that hold food, water, and waste. Okay, so think about this. An engine, an incubator, an international border crossing, a truck, or a storage tank. So which one of those 5 hold things? An engine kind of like gives something power, makes it go. An incubator keeps things warm and helps them grow. An internal border crossing is exactly that. It helps people cross over, international rather. A truck, it kind of like is a vessel that takes things places, but a storage tank stores, it holds things. Now it says, what is the function of the cell membrane? Well, let's look up here. Controls the passage of substances into and out of the cell. Okay, to regulate all the reproductive activities, and nowhere did it say regulate reproductive activities. Number 2 says to regulate the flow of materials in and out, and this says substances in and out of the cell. Hey, that's pretty good. Let's keep reading though. 3 says to transport materials, including proteins throughout the cell. And it doesn't take things places, it regulates things coming in and out. So it has to do with transport, but not physically transporting itself. 4, to break down sugar to provide energy. That's the mitochondria that breaks down. That's the powerhouse of the cell. We can't speak. 5, to provide storage space for food, water, waste, and remember that was what we saw over here. That was a vacuole. So it is not 5, and we're back to 2 here. To regulate the flow of materials into and out of the cell. Very good. Now this is a diagram of a plant and a diagram of an animal cell. Okay? They both have, as you can see, a nucleus, and they both have cell membranes, right? Mitochondrium. Let's see what else. Cytoplasm, chromatin. They both have a nucleolus. They both have ribosomes. They both have vacuoles. They both have ER. But plants, because they can make, remember, their own energy, have these chloroplasts. And they also have a cell wall. So those are the things that are unique to a plant that animal cells do not have. It says, which of the following structures present in a plant are present in a plant cell but absent in an animal cell? Hey, we already did that. We saw chloroplasts and cell wall. And so right here we only have B, cell wall. So now that's 2 because it's only B. Okay, so now we've done this first one. What I want you to do, we'll do in class, we'll work on this next little section, page 5 together. So this was Life Sciences Cell Practice.